It all had started at the beginning of the 80s. It's okay?
Now better, much better.
Better, but not that good. During the first Lebanon War, June 1982, I was ordered to lead 3 front-line brigades of paratroops, infantry, and armor. Telling my experiences there is beyond the scope of our short presentation. But then, around September 1982, a commander of the armor brigade that was just mentioned above resigned as an act of protest towards the Army's high command intention to get into Beirut and to conquer it. His estimation was that it would be a total disaster for civilian and Army casualties. As a soldier, he was willing to serve as an ordinary tank staff member in his brigade, and of course the angry Army command kicked him out of the Army at once. But now the Army had a problem. It was not clear if this first-class Army unit is ready to fight, following the crisis of losing its commander. As it happens in war, more often than not, absolute becomes reality, and your humble colleague was sent to this armor brigade as an expert, being a mixture of ex-combat officer and mental health professional, to see if the guys there are fit to fight. Why me? It's another too long story. In short, the deputy commander was in my small paratroops unit during our regular service 10 years before. And this made me one of the old boys, a fact which served as a password to get into the core of the system in this delicate point. So on one rather grayish day, I appeared in the headquarters of the brigade and met the deputy commander. We had a chat and later he introduced his staff officers. Chaim Knobler was the brigade medical officer. I didn't know him before. And you may say that it was a start of a nice friendship, like from Casablanca, Africa. We discovered soon that he knows Hillel Klein as a close friend of his parents, and at the same time, I was working in the hospital that Hillel headed. To give you just a touch of those strange, timeless days, one snapshot example. Klein and I were sitting on the roof of a high building on the hills above Beirut. On Friday afternoon, the massive bombarding of the city started. We, both children of Holocaust survivors, were watching this apocalyptic view of bombarding from air, sea, and ground, and at the same time listening to Beethoven's symphony that was playing on the radio. To make the story short, the brigade accepted happily my okay that they all fit to fight. My scientific impression was much based on what I had seen there and how their medical officer monitored their sanity in a situation that only those who read Catch-22 or had been in war can grasp how deeply crazy it was. Carl Edelman will talk in a moment about the next step in our voyage in time, when he met Hillel in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem at the very same time, summer 1982. My next step in this voyage was after Hillel's death, when I published a paper called Second Generation of the Holocaust, a concept in question. Since only one generation had been in the Holocaust, and since, as far as I know, the Holocaust has not been existed anymore, the concept second generation is misleading. It may well be that the syndrome of the Holocaust offspring is a valuable definition of the phenomena where the effects of a trauma are transmitted from generation to generation. But, and this is a big but, numbering, counting of generations when the Holocaust was actually ended, is not less than a severe distortion of reality perception. I suggested that there is a reason to our strange behavior, using this not real concept. My metaphor to explain that was the exodus from Egypt. After the exodus, the Israelites were wandering for 40 years in the desert. During that desert time, so it was told, all the first generation of the exodus died. Only those born in the desert in freedom entered into the promised land. From then on, in Passover, it is said in the Haggadah that each person must regard himself as if he himself had come out of Egypt. My suggestion was that in those 40 years, the generation that was born after Exodus in the desert was called second generation of the Exodus. The extreme amplitude of the historical and personal event was beyond the ability of one generation to grasp, to understand, to digest its impact. The children were, so to speak, taken into the event, although it ceased to exist after it happened, and it is not happening anymore. Then, after the first generation died, in fact, the only generation that was there, the numbering, counting, stopped. Since then, our way to deal with the complexity and the extreme heavy weight of this mega event is by seeing ourselves as if we all had been there. I hope you see what seems to me a clear similarity. Both events are beyond time, and they are timeless. They exist in the present as if they were not ended, and the flow of time does not change their strong mega effect on us. As if we all had been there, we are obliged, if not forced, to deal with its never-ending emotional influence. To close the circle, the paper appeared in the same volume of Israeli Psychotherapy Journal, where Hillel's paper, 40 years after the Holocaust that Henry just mentioned, was published after his death. Symbolically, we were continuing our discussions that took place around the hills of Etanim Hospital during those unforgotten walking supervisions, when I learned from a short distance what does it mean to be a good supervisor. Lessons that I took for all my professional life. Of course, the paper was and is a target of fire from those who understood it as a denial of Holocaust, but it must not be a surprise if we take into account that this event makes people crazy even if it ended 60 years ago. This always will be the case, and in this sense, it is a timeless event. Last stop in our voyage in time was when Karl Nedelman and I met in German-Israeli conference that took place in 1994. And another friendship started when at first it seemed against all odds. Although this story is too beyond the scope of our short presentation, I can assure you that it has the same characteristics of meeting in a timeless space where past and present interweave to a point that you feel the past in the present. Hillel would love to be participant in such encounter. In fact, he was the first to make them real. For that, we all feel gratitude that it is now expressed in our very meeting here. Thank you.